People with big, what problem do you face the most? Touching the inside with the tip when sitting on toilet. Not like on purpose, but it'll hang down and you will touch the side, bottom of the toilet on accident. Oh, and hurting the partner is also pretty bad. Honestly, the toilet thing is so gross when it happens. It feels like I've immediately caught some toilet STI, particularly in public toilets. I hold my dong or just push it to one side to make sure there's no contact. I've only dated one girl who liked her cervix pounded. That was nice. Most girls don't like it, which is fine. I really don't mind, but sometimes I feel like Superman being carefuling a human. It's an issue at home, but we are awked about cleaning. It's more of a pain when I'm in someone's home who is not so particular. I carry wet wipes in a snack-size Ziploc in my cargo pocket just for the inside of toilet bowls. We've been married for 30 years and learned right away not to go full-bore cervix smash. She'll use her hand as a bumper when things get too fiery. I feel bad for smaller fellas. I had two of my friends walk in while I was changing into swimming trunks in my junior year of high school, and they both kind of just stood there for a second, then said sorry and shut the door. 2 hours later, everyone in my friend group was teasing me with a new nickname, Horse Cock Specialist Rush, and 2 days later I think my entire high school knew. Felt like my friends must have discussed my with every other person they talked to. It's really not super fun to have something like that become the talk of the school. The only good thing that came of it was one girl that I didn't really like but was decent looking came on to me super hard at a party a few weeks later. This was my experience as well. In high school, I was the nerdy loner emo kid. Nobody really paid me any mind. Then one night whilst hanging out with friends, I was laying in just the wrong position for a buddy to see and accuse me of being hard. I explained I wasn't. That's just how I was when soft. And the next day it got out that I had a big. What happened next was fucking weird. Nobody believes this happened, but I was at school and some of the rougher lads were bullying me a bit, just verbal stuff. From out of nowhere, maybe the third most popular girl in school stuck up for me and told them to back off, that I was a nice guy. We had literally never spoken to one another before. She took me to a small room that had a circle of girls sat in chairs. It was like a secret girl club or something. They brought up the rumors and pressured me into showing, but I was creeped out and left. For the rest of my high school days, the secret circle of popular girls would follow me around and keep trying to see my. I kinda hated it. When I go poop, it touches the inside of the toilet or sometimes the water, and I feel like I immediately just caught a disease because of it. I couldn't think of any actual issues Ireland that bother me, but I forgot about this. I piss first holding my. Then I put some toilet paper down on the rim of the lid and rest my there while I so it doesn't dangle in the water. One time I was really drunk and at this nasty dive bar, and I just sat down without thinking and dipped my in the toilet water where someone hadn't flushed. Pretty sure my touched the poop in there. Why aren't you holding it up so it doesn't flop down into the pot? When I sit down, I grab the peener and never let it go down into the depth of hell. Then when I piss, I either do that at the urinal before or after dropping the deuce. Because why would one with a honking meat stick want to piss while sitting down and getting the tip in the water? So not a guy, but I accidentally walked into my friend peeing outside at a party. He was massive, lol. So drunk me asked him about his life. Turns out being big isn't all that great. He told me he's honestly depressed over it. I guess he split a girl once, and it scared him. And every time he tries having, he always ends up hurting his partner even though he's careful. The homie cried when he told me this. Could have been the alcohol. If you go through my posting history, you'll see I've written about this before. I've never really compared, but I guess I'm above average, and it's honestly been a huge problem when I was younger. I'd go home with a girl, have a lot of fun and exiting foreplay, only for her to back out when the pants came off. It's not fun being told there's no way she'd want to even try, and despite us both trying to make light of it, it's like being told you're defective. When I met my wife, I made sure to tell her before we actually went home together. And even then, I had to convince her to try just a little bit. We went slow and spent literally all night slowly working everything out. We've been married for 20 plus years and have a few kids, so for me it eventually worked out, but it's definitely not the blessing porn likes to pretend it is. Had two friends who were porn star huge. When we were younger, like 17-19, there were a multiple different times where he and a girl would try to have and it just wouldn't fit. And then word got around about how big he was and he was embarrassed by it. And never mind getting a BJ. The other friend's girlfriend and him got drunk and wild one night, and the next day she had to go to the hospital because she was basically torn up from it. I felt bad for them both. Actually, if I'm not wrong, guys over 6 in already find problems finding partners that does not found their size uncomfortable or just straight up to painful, and over 9 or 10, I can barely imagine a woman taking it all without suffer. Women with deep enough vaginas for taking this kind of tool are as rare as the men who have the tool themselves. As a woman, I can confirm that big ones hurt, even more if you have never had kids through your vagina or naturally super tight like me. It's not the flex people think it is. My hubby is very big and it takes a good 5 minutes of super slow penetration and lube before it's actually comfortable enough to actually have. It's great for performing oral on, and after I'm comfortable it feels great, but a huge hassle. Another way porn has warped people's minds about they think because porn stars just shove a huge in a girl in a porn, that's how you do it in real life, but that will hurt a girl. I had an ex who went from "it's a good pain" to "it's a bad pain" thanks to the subtle shift in wear and tear because of the Nexplanon implant. Note, implant? She wasn't real keen on getting that Zwicker torn out of her arm, and to be honest, I'm not sure if she realized it was the source of the problem. We went from able to have twice a week, if we were careful to know it all, with even oral being too much while she healed. It was honestly heartbreaking to see her in pain and frustrated to the point of tears. And yeah, getting flat out rejected, or told I like anal, but not with that. Or just the knowledge of how many partners find oral to be a chore or a literal pain. There's a lot to be said for boyfriend like women who are excited to show off their oral S. A friend I've known for well over 15 years at this point complains about this exact problem. I have seen his and have had to use my fist as an example in several conversations about the size. His girlfriend that I knew from college was a tiny thing and liked it rough. He apparently dislocated her hip once. It's one of those things that eats at him since he has to be careful about it. I'm larger than average. Some of the issues I always face would be that guys don't invite me to the parties, or they try to start fights with me aka jealousy. If you're dating a girl, she will tell her friends. And then their friends now want to sleep with me, which causes relationship problems. Women always looking at my bulge, whether it's at work, gym, etc. Quite unprofessional. I've sent 2 girls to the hospital for rupturing an ovarian cyst they were unaware of. I'm only 5'6", so small things certainly can have a big package. Sometimes it can be intimidating for the receiving end, I'm sure, but this was a new one for me though. I have to wear underwear if I ever want to wear sweatpants or gym shorts around the house. Living with nothing but friends in my 20s, I never had this problem, but a few years ago I moved in with my girlfriend and she has 2 daughters. They were 3 and 5 at the time. I sleep naked, and when I wake up, I will put on gym short or sweatpants and make my way to the bathroom or kitchen. They are always awake before us. They head right for the living room TV to watch Netflix. I passed by them and told them good morning, but I noticed their eyes were staring directly at my cock and balls with a confused look on their face. Ever since that morning, I wake up and will grab underwear before I open the door. One time right in front of me, they told their grandparents that it looks like I poop my pants from the front. Plot twist, Op is looking for dudes with big D. Years ago, a friend showed me this forum for guys with big ES. Skimming, I'd estimate it was 50% men discussing what brands of clothing to buy, avoid, and what tricks to use for dealing with chafing or other athletic problems. 45% men commiserating about dealing with partners who didn't want to have or were clearly forcing it and not enjoying it, and 5% women posting their location and asking if anyone lived nearby. Those size queen posts were so weird because it's a bunch of guys earnestly supporting each other through the hardships of dealing with a lifelong issue, and these women are just like, sorry to hear about your problem, but it's not a problem to me, so anyone wanna split drinks and then split me. Rolling over while sleeping, breaking into a full sprint, getting stopped by TSA, although inconvenient, has become hilarious to see the look on their face after fucking around and finding out. So you know when they ask for another opinion before doing the pat down sometimes? Well, there was a lady on another station that looked over at the screen, then looked at me and then back at the screen and shouted, "He's good." Mr. America decides to do a full pat down and immediately turns red and tells me I'm good. Top tier moment of traveling. You sparked a memory of mine. Me and my girlfriend were having on a side road in the back seat of her car. Cop pulls up shining lights on us. We quickly get dressed and he asks us to step out. He decided I needed a pat down. I complied and he immediately stopped when he touched my still raging boner that I had conveniently tucked under my waistband but still was above my belt line. He told us to leave right after. So my hubby is very much on the larger side, and to be honest, whilst it's typically great for me, I think it's an inconvenience for him. We are slightly limited on positions and he constantly has to be reserved and show restraint when we're having so he doesn't injure me. Also, things like blowjobs probably aren't as good, though he assures me they are, as again, you're limited to how much you can take in. I can relate on the position issue. The only one that really works without being uncomfortable or just outright painful is prone bone. Missionary works for a little while, but I have to careful or I hit her cervix and she does not enjoy that at all. Lube is almost always necessary regardless of how much foreplay or arousal. I can count on one hand the number of times we have made it work without lube. I spent many years wondering what all the hype around BJS was about. Never enjoyed them. Had multiple partners leave teeth scrape marks. Assumed it was all normal and BJS just weren't for me. Pro tip for folks with partners of bigger size. Use your hand with medium grip and lots of lubricant during the BJ, moving your hand so your thumb and forefinger are always touching your lips. First time someone did this for me was when it finally clicked why people enjoy BJS. The amount of money I have to spend to get the 12 lift for my F250 and 40 tires. Also, those fake ball sacks that hang from the trailer hitch cost more than you'd expect. Thanks for the award, folks. I think I just gained another inch of manhood. Went to buy a parts car for my wife's excursion. Had blown engine and the price was right. Didn't care about the 8 lift or 35 tires. I wanted the windows, rear AC, and doors. Turned out the blown engine was a $100 fix and my F150 broke down the next day. So now I drive the biggest truck around town that I have seen so far, 2 months. Literally can look in Semi's windows straight on. The jokes, the everlasting jokes, everybody's got them, and I'm driving such a stupid thing you just have to take them and grin. Also, here is part of the tired of dipping in the toilet crowd, so when people make the joke, I just say it's just enough to have for kids. Obviously, this is more of a small energy thing, but it's so fucking tiresome having douche bros trying to start a measuring contest with their car, truck, expensive watch, job, or how much you earn. Especially when you know you won that particular contest at birth, have nothing to compensate for, so drive a car they think is gay or for women, all while their girlfriend invariably flirts with you behind their back. Not because you have a big, but because their boyfriend is so insecure, and you're above that nonsense. An actual man, not a man-child. I sometimes flirt with these insecure losers. Scares them off. They often don't realize they're being made fun of, and that their girlfriend is laughing at them behind their back. I lived in Korea, Japan, and China for a while, and a lot of girls just were too scared or in pain to enjoy with me. It actually svcacscccccccccccs. Also condoms there, even the big ones were terrible. While a lot of guy friends joke with me, yeah, I'm sure it's VCACSCCCCCCCCCs. It meant me losing someone I loved a lot. We just couldn't have without it hurting her. While I'm sure she also was on the other end of the spectrum being tiny, what should be considered a pleasurable act was anything but. You have to be concerned about clothing, especially dress pants or sweats. I had to wear baggier, almost sloppier looking pants to hide my member. Imagine being freakishly tall and not finding a comfortable bed, plain seat, or even clothing, shoes, how tiring it would be in your daily life. It's the same type of inconvenience with being much bigger than average in the department. For average guys out there, be thankful and don't compare yourself to porn stars. I guess I'll give a honest answer since most of these seem to be what a teenager would think it's an issue if they had a big. Most women don't care about size unless it's too big or too small. So it rarely gets me laid unless someone is specifically looking for it, and that is very rare. Men, on the other hand, really care about size. The bigger the better for men. I've been part of hot wife couples, and it's always the husband that wants a big. I think the women in these relationships could care less about it. They get more turned on that their partner being turned on than how big is the actual they'll be having with. If I was gay, I might be able to get laid more often because of the size, but unfortunately I'm not, and I can't force myself to like men as partners. If it gets out that you have a big, the way other guys start treating you changes. The women don't care and will ignore it because it's not an important part of life. No, it does not make women more promiscuous and prone to want to have with you. What it does is bring out insecurities of men around that found out and start treating you differently. They'll start looking for things wrong about you. Rumors will be started, and once I've had someone try to discredit everything I would do. I'm not 100% sure it was because he found out about it, but things did get different around the office when the news got out. You could hurt your partner during. This one is probably the one that I saw in the comments that I think it's true and it's an actual issue. We are all made different, and some of my partners just don't feel comfortable with it and after some time of adjustment. Everything else could be great, but it does get frustrating seeing someone you want to please struggle or be in pain. I've been lucky that I've had great partners that make an effort and really try to have fun and enjoy it, but you could really tell it was not something they were enjoying all of the time. As someone who feels pain regardless of size, even with tampons or my own finger, I find that dudes with a bigger one are more gentle since they're used to it, and don't try to force it in or coerce you into continuing despite the pain. It's given me so much hope to see how many people on here are concerned about hurting their partners. I constantly have to remind some guys that just because you're small doesn't mean that you can just ram yourself into me. It fucking hurts. My dad used to work with a well-hung black dude at a VA hospital, and back in those days the workers' restrooms were military style without individual stalls, just a line of toilets with barely existent dividers between them. Every day the two of them would meet for their morning constitution on work time, and my dad would always ask his friend how the water was today. His coworker always replied cold. It is already pretty thick, and my so has some difficulty putting her mouth on it. Gets worse when I get close to busting and she'll stop. She has also gagged on it because I have the slight habit of thrusting when it starts to feel good. And she knows it is going to be a pain in if we ever do anal. People suspect it's really easy to find partners, but when you're very well endowed, it's difficult to find partners that want to try it. A lot of people can handle it with time and training, but getting over mental barriers like anxiety and intimidation comes up often and has even ruined relationships for me. I had a friend in college that was trying to find and get on the biggest cock she could find. Well, one night she came over to my place with a look of shell shock in her eyes. She told me she had just gone home with a guy who had the biggest she had ever seen. It was so big that she looked at it and said, that's just not going to fit, and walked out. I had a friend called Hulon. Hulon was big. I know this because I was his wingman. Hulon would always go home with women from our bar hopping. I was always hit or miss, mostly miss. I liked bar hopping with Hulon for the occasions when he charmed a woman with her roommate. We would go back to Hulon or the women's place. There was never a time I did not hear shock and surprise from the woman Hulon was with. 9 out of 10 Hulon would only get a blowjob. Most of the time we would switch partners. AG and Hulon would 9 out of 10 get a blowjob, and half the time I got the luck of being with both women. None, but I made a fool of myself when I asked in an art history class in college, when they were talking about contrapposto of classical Renaissance sculptures, why the male sculptures had small genitals when their shapes and sizes and muscles were subtly exaggerated. The class laughed. It took me 4 hours later in the day to realize something. The biggest problem I face with my partner is very limited to positions. It can get really frustrating. Missionary is mostly all that can be done, and even that one is limited to just 2 styles of missionary. Any other positions and it's constant pushback with the hands, or closing her legs up to limit how deep I can go. But it is what it is, I guess. We talked about it, and I don't want to make her feel bad cause it ain't her fault, so I have to always keep in mind where to stop when penetrating and try to remember how far I go while reaching climax. I'm gay, but men always want it until they see it in person. I don't have a lot of, but every time I do it's awkward because I am constantly worried about hurting the other person and having to stop and adjust. Trying to date is really difficult too, because once someone in the community knows you're big, everyone does. So I get hit on a lot by guys that just want to sleep with me because they know I'm not, but none of them want to date me. So I have very low self-confidence. Finding condoms when I first started having was a nightmare. Just because you can technically stretch a normal condom over your elbow or something doesn't mean that it is comfortable on your junk. I went through every stereotypical large-size condom I could find in store, all of which had issues. Finally ended up getting a custom size at my own, which have worked out incredibly well. There is no single major glaring issue with having a big, generally, just multiple minor and notable ones. First of all, no one wants to hear about it. People love small jokes and tend to get aggravated, skeptical, and insecure at the idea of someone having a big. The skepticism part is kind of justified due to so many guys bolting about it. Barely a problem, but still. Then there's having a bulge. I don't want to distract people or come off as a creep, so I have to be conscious of if my outline is poking out, and tuck it in and wear the right legwear. An inconvenience. In addition to this, having a large feels kind of meaningless since people don't treat you differently, not that they should, and I still barely have any self-confidence. The final issue worth mentioning is the super fetishization of large, which takes a creeping psychological toll of slightly molesting my self-perception and seeing myself as a Yule object. There's apparently also issues, but I haven't had yet, so I don't know. It has utterly destroyed my life with my wife. I'm large enough that during intercourse, I used to bonk into her cervix, which hurts her, and she developed vaginismus, which is a condition that's part physical, part psychological, in which any penetration into the vagina is excruciating. She never wants to have ever, has utterly lost all interest. My libido, on the other hand, is enormous. It has caused constant friction between us for 30 years, and I've periodically contemplated both divorce and suicide. There's 3 things that I have a problem with. Touching the inside of the toilet with my when I'm taking a feels gross. It's hard to hide erections. My girlfriend complains that it sometimes hurts when we have, and she has even started to bleed sometimes. This results in us almost never having more than 1 to 2 times a month. With my wife for 13 years and still hurts her, but in a good way. Causes bleeding a lot. Put a girl in the hospital years ago from a perforation of the vagina walls that made her lose a lot of blood and rejection. You have no idea on how many girls would say, "You putting that in here? No way," then they just svick the tip and jerk it while I play with them. Also never had a girl fully put it in her mouth and probably will never know that feeling. In day-to-day life it is simply annoying. It hangs around in loose underwear as if you were wearing none, so you are already limited. If you pick something tighter, it is pretty hard to find something that is holding it in place but also not hurting you when wearing it for long period of times. Besides of that, it was quite embarrassing at school. Imagine putting your D up so it won't show in your pants and it starts going out at the top because you saw some girl you liked and young age did its thing. Only thing covering it is your t-shirt. Trauma for life. The fact that people who know seems compelled to talk about it. Like, my wife's best friend, who I actually like as a person, got drunk one night and said to me, "So I hear you can really roll out the red carpet." I gave her a confused look. She then made a baby arm gesture, and I was so taken aback I didn't know what to say. I just chuckled and kept cooking. Such a double standard. What if at some point I turn to my best friend's wife and say, "Hey, I heard you keep it pretty tight down there." Think about the contorted look on your face right now.